All right, so today we are going to do chapter 17 and we are going to talk about delegation as well. So chapter 17 is going to talk a little bit about your role as an LPN, LVN, as a leader. Okay, and so some of the things that you need to know in order to be a leader, um, some of your skills, some other things as well. So, excuse me, I will share my screen. And yes, yeah, your PowerPoints are in the announcements as well. All right, so chapter 17. Um, LPNs as first line leaders. And so charge nurses, right? How many here currently again are CNAs? How many of y'all are CNAs already working in? Okay. And so charge nurses, a lot of LPNs, especially in the long-term care settings, are going to work as charge nurses. So you will be responsible for supervising your nursing assistants. So you need to develop, you can't some, leadership and management skills. Any level that you're at, you're going to have to manage patients and clients' care, right? Client care. So, um, you're going to be, you know, looking at those CNAs, overseeing them, how they're delivering their care, whether it's
I don't think that's
um, whether it is in a long-term care center or even out in the community. Um, and all of our like in our facility, all of our LPNs, all our RNs who are the ones that work the units are all considered charge nurses, and they are responsible for, a set of the residents or clients, as well as the CNAs that are working with them. All organizations have a mission statement or a vision statement. And, I'm sure it doesn't matter what organization that you work with, they're going to have some sort of a vision statement or mission statement that defines their purpose, their goals. Um, it also states their values, their culture, their norms, right? So it provides a foundation for collaborative decision making, core values, beliefs, right? They can flow from that mission statement. And it could include things like, I don't know, customer service, teamwork, respect, trust, right? Those typical ones, excellence, client-centered care, cost-effective, safe care, that kind of thing. Fortis has a mission statement. Hospitals, pretty much every organization has some sort of a mission statement. So as you know, so the LPNs are going to work towards that vision, lead the team members in fulfilling the commitment to the mission. So any facility that you work at, any organization, you need to know what the mission statement is in order to do that. Um, and so your expanded role as a leader. Okay, you are going to have to know your Nurse Practice Act. That's going to that's going to give you what your role is, what your boundaries are. And again, if you've not looked at your Nurse Practice Act, I really highly suggest that you start looking at it now. Um, has anybody ever seen an org chart before? Depends on where you working. So an org chart basically tells you where you stand within an organization. All right. And this is just like a generic org chart. Okay. So you have the owner of the nursing home. All right. And underneath that, you have the board of directors. Okay. That, kind of who the home is responsible to. Um, and so then, you have the different departments that fall within that facility. So here it has OT, dietary, physical therapy, nursing, maintenance, social services, secretarial services, activities department. where you work is going to determine this setup, okay? All of us in nursing are going to fall under the nursing department. All right. Oops, sorry. And so this could be a typical setup. You have a DON, you have your nurse manager, you have your charge nurses, and then you have your nursing assistants. Again, knowing the org chart does help you to understand where you fall within the organization, who your direct supervisor is, who are you responsible to. So, this could be something, this is another one. Um, so you have your director of nursing, your supervisor, your nurse manager. I know some, like for instance, in mine, we have the director of nursing, and then we don't have nurse managers. We have assistant director of nursing. So we have an assistant director of nursing for the long-term care side. Then we have another assistant director of nursing for the skilled care rehab side. And then under that would be your supervisors. We don't have a nurse manager, but then you would have your charge nurses. Okay. And so your charge nurse and then your nursing assistants and your UAPs underneath that. Um, so obviously this is very small. If this was an actual org chart, there would actually be names listed, on each one, right? Who are, who the AD, who the DON is, who the ADONs are, who the charge nurses are, and even the CNAs that typically would fall under you. So again, it's, org charts are nice, especially in larger facilities and larger organizations, to kind of know where you sit and who you are responsible to, not as far as like reporting goes. So again, can't reiterate enough, know your nurse practice act. I know we've talked about that before, but really understanding your nurse practice act as well as your roles and responsibilities within the organization, as well as the roles and responsibilities of your CNAs. Because when you get to delegation on knowing what they can and cannot do under that nurse practice act is going to be extremely important. Um, there's also, of course, NAPNES is a really good resource, which is the um, National Association for Practical Nurse Education and Services. The National Association of Licensed Practical Nurse, which is your NALPN, is another really good resource for nursing standard practice. So, the difference between leadership and management. Leaders and managers are really two different things. Management is just the organization of all the care that is, within a specific setting, whereas leadership is how a person empowers and develops a team to meet and exceed client and the institutional outcomes. So the focus of management is more planning, it's more directing, it's more task oriented. Um, they run the day-to-day operations. They can value control, but should focus on collaboration, but they really do like the power and the control. Um, they are appointed by their employers. They instruct others. They will have subordinates, their supervisors, again, planning, directing. Whereas your leaders, the focus of leaders is to produce change in the workplace that will meet the goals of the employing agency. So they inspire trust, they're people oriented, um, they what else? They listen, they empower their employees. They generally have followers. They're good delegators. They're good at goal exploring as well as reflecting. Directions for leadership skills. You can learn leadership skills, but a lot of times it's through your experience that you're really going to really develop those leadership skills. Um, So again, just a little bit more management coordinates people, time, and supplies to get the desired outcomes. They have an appointed management position and then a formal line of authority as well as accountability, whereas your leaders have the ability to empower and influence the beliefs, opinions, or behaviors of a person by or group by guiding, motivating, and inspiring. And then they may not have formal authority, but they are still able to influence others, which are your informal leader. So well, give me an example or what would be an informal leader? Like who would, how do I ask this? Would you consider an informal leader? Has
And
anybody
floor
heard that term
manager,
before? Okay, it could be a floor manager.
an
Has anybody
experienced
heard the term
one?
informal leader before?
No, I
Yeah.
haven't.
Okay, so an informal leader. So you're doesn't matter where you're working. It can happen anywhere. All right. You have a group anywhere you have a group of people that are all working for the same organization, right? There's not always, but most of the time, right? There's that one person, whether, that's not in a formal leadership position, but is always there to help everybody, always knows, what to do, where to go, where to find stuff. That's, kind of, I always think of like your work mom or, somebody like that, where they don't have a formal leadership position, but people generally tend to flock towards them, when they need assistance. Um, and they have the ability to influence others with that. So there's, like I said, in a lot of places you'll have these little informal leaders that, can be very effective in helping as well. So what are some of the things as you are preparing to become to be in a management or a leadership role? How many have had like anybody had any supervisory experience before where you've had to supervise other people within a job that you've had or anything like that? Um, so going in, or let's ask another question. Anybody want to work long-term care when they graduate from nursing school? So Janasia, Latrice, Julianne's on the fence. Okay. Um, so going into a long-term care, you most likely will have supervising, you will be supervising CNAs. And so basic nursing skills, the all the wonderful skills that you're learning in nursing school, making sure that you really know how to use that nursing process, right? The ADPI, time management techniques. Who's got really good time management skills? I love the honesty though. It's awesome. Yes. Some people are really good with time management. Others, I always have the best intentions with time management. I go in and I'm like, okay, this is how I'm gonna run the shift. This is what we're gonna do. And, sometimes it plays out really well. Sometimes, it's almost change shift and I'm still running around trying to get stuff done, right? So it really just depends. But finding ways to be organized is going to be key. Um, Even knowing how to learn new information, including using evidence for learning as well as decision making. And that's why I mentioned like your NAPNEs, and the other resources will be very big. Like I said, the NALPN is really good for those types of resources. Even, your nursing journals and things. The power of positive self-talk and thinking. Anybody do like daily affirmations, right? Like you can do this,
I
right?
should. Like, I have a book right here. It's like it's a little book of encouragements, but I haven't opened it yet. I should, but I haven't.
That goes back to time management, right? Um, but it's powerful, and the power of positive self-talk. I know that, everybody has heard that nursing is very stressful, right? I don't know if you've heard that or not. But sometimes just, giving yourself a pep talk, like, hey, I can do this, right, is sometimes enough. But it's not always just about us, right? It may be your CNA is having a bad day, right? And we need to give them some guidance and provide them some positive self-talk. Um, Rules for assertiveness. And we talked about communication, right? And we talked about the difference between being aggressive and being assertive, right? And so knowing how to be assertive, how to stick up for yourself, how to stick up for your clients, even your CNAs in some cases. Good communication skills. And that is your written as well as your verbal, right? Making sure that, when you're writing your nursing notes, your emails, right, that you're portraying yourself as a professional. You're using really good grammar, proper English, right? Avoiding those abbreviations, or what I like to call the text talk, right? Sometimes it's, um, easier. And just as I'm going to give you an example. I used to one of the jobs that I had. I was a corporate educator, and I traveled to 7 facilities, and I also used to do chart audits. Um, and one of the nurses wrote in the chart FOFLOL. And um of course I had to flag it because once you write in a chart, it's there forever, whether you strike it out or not, it's still there forever. I knew what the FOF was found on floor. That sometimes, if we have a patient or a resident that falls, we'll write FOF, found on floor. Um, and the LOL is really what got me. Um, and so, because we think laughing out loud, right? When we think LOL. Um, and I forget what it was, lying on something, I can't remember what it was. Um, and of course, I had to talk to her about it, and I was like, as you were writing this, did you notice that it just didn't look right? And she said, she goes, that's not what I meant. I said, but I understand that's not what you meant, but that's what it says, right? And so now, of course, that's a huge issue because clients and patients have the right to see their charts, and that includes their nurses' notes. And we weren't able to, get rid of it. It's going to be in that client's chart forever, but she was able to, add a new note and clarify what she was writing. Um, you have to know what the ethical aspects of healthcare are, the legal aspects, problem solving, critical thinking skills, stress management, and you will have to participate in clinical evaluations. So, those of you that are CNAs now, okay, as you move and transition into that nursing role and you're overseeing CNAs, you're going to have to evaluate them, and you're going to have to be objective in how you evaluate them. And I've seen CNAs become LPNs and stay within the same organization that they were in as a CNA. And some adapt really well to the change. Some struggle with it because now, they're evaluating the ones that used to be their peers, and sometimes makes it a little bit difficult for them. So these are just some of the things that, again, as you're preparing for that role, that you need to have some knowledge about. Leadership styles. So what kind of leader are you? There's, um, different these three different types of leaders. Understanding what your leadership role is or what your leadership style is important. Um, Autocratic styles, these are more of the just kind of go do what I asked you to do. So, um, it's more of a what it's like a what is it order, like go, turn and reposition Mrs. Jones, right? Doesn't really require anybody to have, any feedback with it. Your democratic style is a balance. um and so democratic styles is pretty much a lot of, one of probably the majority of most leaders. Laissez-faire, those are the ones that are kind of laid back. They're more worried about if the staff is okay. They're concerned more with the employer. And so most people are a combination of all three, depending on the situation. Um, when, we look at it, autocratic, this is, I always think of the military, right? Like barking orders, doesn't expect any kind of feedback. Um, and this just breaks it down a little bit more. So autocratic, they don't share responsibility and authority with the employees. The emphasis is strictly on policies. They tell employees what tasks need to be done. They don't seek any input from the employee. And, the goal is to get, to reach the goals. Autocratic styles are very good in crisis situations, in codes, in emergencies, right? Where somebody is has just collapsed and you need someone to take charge and direct staff and to tell them what to, go get the AED, right? Go call 911, right? Doesn't require feedback, just it's just, organizing and making sure everything gets done. Same thing if there's a fire, a flood, a hurricane, tornado, whatever, adverse event occurs, right? Somebody that's going to step in, be able to take charge and, organize people and get things done. The laissez-faire gives away responsibility and authority to the employees. So basically, the employees are running the show. Okay. It puts the employees before the policy. They try to please everybody. Um, they at least the staff is happy, the staff feels good, maybe not getting a whole lot done. This type of leadership can be effective if, goals and policies are not a consideration. Um, and I don't know, this is hard for me, to try to find a really good example. If this could actually be a really good one if you have staff that's highly motivated, or goal oriented, and maybe they don't need to have a very strong leadership, take on what's going on because the employees are just kind of getting it done. And then you're democratic. Again, majority of your leaders are democratic leaders. They share responsibility. Um, and authority with the employees. They enforce the policies, but still have a concern for the employee. They seek input. They encourage problem solving. Goals can achieve. Staff is still positive. And this is just the normal everyday, right, functioning. Reviewing care plans. Everybody is collaborating together, working together. Um, has anybody ever worked for an autocratic, somebody that just likes to bark orders all the time?
Yeah, but it was in a restaurant. He was the
Okay.
worst.
But even in a restaurant, I mean, you don't want somebody that's just constantly barking orders, right?
Yeah,
Those,
he was the worst. He would call us like dumbasses, this, that, the third.
okay, yeah, that's not
He
a good
was
leadership.
excuse me, freak him. Pardon me, that wasn't professional.
That's okay. But you're right. But that is, when you have somebody that's like that, that doesn't have any concern for the employees, is constantly demeaning them and putting them down, that does not promote good teamwork. It doesn't promote staff. Um, what's the word I'm looking for? Cohesiveness. It doesn't encourage staff to want to stay, right? Nobody wants to go to work and get demeaned every day, right? Um, what about a laissez-faire? Has anybody worked with an employee that's just like, kind of just go do what you want to do, and we'll see what happens at the end. Um, I've never in mine have ever worked for somebody that is like that. But Democratic, usually the better type of leadership, unless there's a specific reason why they should not. Which brings us to the situational leadership. And so situational leadership is basically just varying your leadership style to meet the demands of the situation and the work environment, right? So let's say it's you and you've got three or four CNAs that are working with you, right? And the CNAs generally, they do really well. They work together. There's not a whole lot of, um, a whole lot of issues. Everybody, your patients are all taken care of, right? But there may be a time where maybe, there's certain tasks that need to get done, and you need to be more autocratic and just say, look, this is, we just need to get this done. Let's go. You go do this, you go do that, you go do that, and we'll get it done. But sitting back and kind of letting them just run the show, again, if they're really, really good and you don't have any issues, there may be days where you may not have to be, as directive with them. So you'll use a leadership style that's going to, fit your work situation. Has anybody ever looked to or, you know, see what type of leadership that they are, like what leadership style that you have? Anybody like to bark orders?
I feel like for me,
I'm
I feel
sorry.
like for me, I'll be like Democrat and lazier. Like if I know my team is good, then I don't have to be on their back so much. But like if something serious happens, then I have to be stern with them.
hmm Right. Or even if you have to, if you have to run a code or, something happens, right? You have to be able to switch your leadership style to say, okay, you go do this, you go do that, you go do this, right? And it's, mostly for your safety. Um, that's just be careful, because as a new leader, especially as a new nurse, as a new charge nurse going in, um, so it's an adjustment period, and I'm not gonna, going from not ever being in any type of a leadership, situation to going into a leadership situation can be a little scary. Um, it could be a little overwhelming, knowing that you're responsible not only for your patients, but for those, for the oversight of the staff as well. And so, you don't want to go in super hard and super mean because, right, then you're going to alienate them. You don't want to go in super soft either, right? Because then people tend to take advantage of those situations, right? So, trying to really kind of just go in somewhere in the middle is usually a really good place to start. Core knowledge, skills, some of the other things, motivation. Motivation is always going to, oops, sorry. Motivation is a good one. So what motivates people, right? And so when you look at this motivation, um, think about it. Why did you go to nursing school? Why are you here? Right? And last class or last term before graduation, right? Lots of time to reflect and see like, why are you really here? I know when I was in nursing school, I would remember thinking, oh my gosh, why am I doing this to myself? Um, right? Because it's a lot. Nursing school is a lot, right? Um, but we have intrinsic and we have extrinsic motivators, right? The intrinsic is the stuff that's inside of us, right? What makes us, what drives us. The external could be, better life, being able to provide for my family, um, all sorts of different things. Um, Communication skills, talked about those, problem solving skills, um, team building. Team building, this is a big one. And then stress management. So understanding motivation. So everybody has their own, like I said, everybody has their own motivation for what they are doing, why they are doing it. Um, and what motivates people, right, is going to cause them to either do really well or do really poorly. So it really kind of depends. When you are looking for motivation, what motivates you? Anybody want to share what motivates you to keep doing what you're doing?
My kids.
Your kids. That's usually a really good motivator, right? Understood. What else? What else motivates you?
Like just wanting growth. I've been a CNA for 10 years and I'm over it.
Okay, growth. That's a really good motivator sometimes, right? Like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something more.
I feel the same way. Like I've tried nursing school. Like I tried the prereqs to get into nursing school before, and like I kept failing because like life wasn't. I wasn't at the place I'm at now. So now that I'm
Mhm.
so close to finish, I'm like I'm this close. I finally want to like finish and say like I did it.
Right. Okay, that's
I
a
think
really good.
mine's just along the same lines as Sarah. Like I tried so many things and I never finished anything. My motivation is to finish. Like I want to complete something. I don't want to give up. I have a fear of failing, and that's what stops
Me
me. So
too.
I've been pushing myself to keep going.
That fear of failing can be very overwhelming, can it? It can almost just cause you just to not want to do something, right? Understood. So, knowing what your motivators are, how do we turn around and motivate other people?
I feel like sometimes encouragement and motivate other people by being yourself, and somebody can see it just by being yourself and see how like strong you are or like dedicated you are. And some people get inspired by that, even the ones that you don't even think that's looking.
And
So,
like
leading by
sharing your
example.
spirit, sharing your story of like I've been through this and that, and like I still made it out, or like letting people say like I don't know how to I don't know, but yes, sharing
I
your
know
story.
what you're saying. Yeah, right. Not everybody was born with a silver spoon in their mouth, right? We all work to get where we are, right? And that's, Sarah and Nishay. I started nursing school right out of high school. Okay. I didn't make it past my second semester. I didn't fail. Mine was the opposite. Didn't have the money to keep going back to school. I was working three jobs trying to support myself. So I gave it up, just like y'all, just you kind of just give it up. And so I joined the Navy, and did completely something different. And then when I got out of the Navy, that's when I was like, okay, look, this is something that I've always wanted to do. I'm just gonna buckle down and do it. So yeah, so finding what the motivation is, right? That sometimes is key, in inspiring others. Right? It's not pizza parties, right? Um, Sometimes it's sitting down and really looking and understanding the team that you're working with, and what their motivators are, because we know that motivators like I said, they're internal and they're external, right? And so if some of the things on there, that are not going well around them, right, can really decrease their motivation to do things. Um, so, what you guys kind of said, some of it, you want to model, you want to set the standards, right, for your team. Be optimistic and enthusiastic. Highlight, and reward positive outcomes. So nobody wants to work for a gloomy Gus, right? Nobody wants to work for a gloomy Gus. Somebody is always like, oh my God, one of the worst things that I really dislike is, you go to work, you say good morning, hi, how are you? And they're like, I'm here. Okay, well, thank you for gracing us with your presence, right? Why are you here? If you don't want to be here, why are you here? Right? And that goes for the same for a leader. If you're, you know, if that's the attitude that you portray, right, to your fellow employees, right, they're not going to get inspired. They're not going to be motivated by you. That's not setting the positive example. When we look at human needs and that, again, we're going to go back to the motivation. Everybody knows who Maslow is, right? And his hierarchy of needs. And at the bottom, you have your physiological, then you have your safety, your love and belongingness, right? Your esteem, your self-actualization. And so, meeting needs on one level of the pyramid is a motivator for meeting the needs on the next level, right? So if my physiological needs are met, right, then I'm going to be motivated to meet the next safety needs, right? So if I have, food and I have love and I have a house and, whatever, then I can move on to the next one. It's going to motivate me, right? Um, when we have overwhelming difficulties, we have, whether it's physical or emotional, we may have some regression. Okay. And so that you're going to fall back to that physiological needs because those are going to be your priority, right? So if you lost your job, you got injured, not able to work, right? Then those physiological needs are going to take priority. Um, we can apply this, okay, to working and over and oh my gosh, what's the word? And supervising, okay? So think about this. These are the work motivators, right? When you go to interview for your job, right? What are the questions that you really want to know? Okay, how much am I going to get paid? Right? What
They
are my
also tell us
benefits?
at school, like for the orientation phase, like new nurses, especially at least like 6 to 8 weeks. Like you don't want to like go into orientation with only like 2 weeks of orientation.
Right? Working conditions, right? Policies, right? Those are the basic stuff, right? Those are the things that you want to know, and once, because, right, I'm not going to just start a job and not know how much I'm going to get paid to do it. And then the safety, right? The job security. And then you go up, right? The hierarchy, right? Just like if we are applying it to physiological needs. Um, and so we can look at this, right? When we look at working with, people that we're working with, right? So, how do we meet their needs, right? Or how are their needs being met? So we talked about this. So I'm going to go ahead and just do that. So I'm going to ask you something. Um, when when you're at work and you're, wherever it is that you're working, whether it's in customer service, whether you're a CNA, what are things at work that make you happy?
But what's the question again? I'm sorry.
What are things at work that make you happy?
A low
Um,
patient to CNA ratio.
yeah, or when like some of the nurses they don't talk to the CNAs as like adults. They tell like little girl you or something. In my experience, not all, but some nurses.
Okay. What else? What else motivates you? What makes you go to work besides money? Okay, put money off the table. What are some reasons why you enjoy doing
Based
what
on
you
like my
do?
past experience, having the higher ups treat me as like just as an employee, like with basic respect, not calling me names. I know
Gotcha.
that's like bare minimum, but that was
But being treated
crazy.
with respect, that's a huge thing,
Yeah.
right? Absolutely. Right? Um,
Or
you
even
know,
people being in a good mood whenever you go in, like
right,
the other employees.
right. Like nobody wants to go in and see a whole bunch of grumpy people, right? That would just make me want to turn around and go home. Like I I'm not always happy. Not gonna I mean, not everybody is happy
I'm like the most
24/7.
positive person at work, but man, it puts a damper when one person is not in the best moods.
They always the negative Nancy's, right? The negative Nancy's. Not what, and that's really sad that one person, one negative attitude can bring a whole team down, right? And so that's why I was like, set the example. You may not want to be there that day. You might be like, I don't want to be here today. Why am I here today? Okay. But that doesn't mean that that's the attitude that you have to portray, right? You can still go in with a smile on your face and be like, we're going to get this done, right? We're going to work together. Um, so, just kind of think about how think of the things that bother you and that you dislike about your leaders or people that you have worked for and be the opposite of that. Things that we really want in where we're working. We want to feel valued, right? We want to feel valued. We want to have growth opportunities, right? Where can I go? What can I do? Can I be more than I'm doing now? Making connections, and empowerment, right? That's where that leadership style comes into play, right? If you have somebody that's autocratic and is just constantly barking orders at you, where's your empowerment? Where's your ownership, right? It doesn't allow you to feel like you're doing a good job, that you have the ability to make decisions, that you're trusted to make decisions, right? So these are our attributes, right, that really lead to really good job satisfaction. Job dissatisfiers, what makes people want to leave their jobs? And this in healthcare can be a lot of different things. Working conditions, availability of equipment. This one will never cease to amaze me. I told you I worked for a company and I traveled. One of our biggest complaints and biggest issues was linen. We never had linen. Like you would have to the poor CNAs would be sitting outside the linen room just waiting for laundry. And then there would barely be enough to meet everybody's needs, right? What was I looking for? I was looking for a specimen cup to collect a urine specimen. Couldn't even find a specimen cup. I cut my finger and I couldn't find a band-aid and I work in healthcare. All right. I mean, it's little things, right? Having what you need in order to do your job. Unrealistic workload. So Julianne mentioned, right? A good CNA patient ratio, right? Um, Regulatory demands, paperwork and charting, that can be a dissatisfier, especially depending on how much charting and how much paperwork that you do have to do in order to, get the job done for the day. Um, Oops. So, right, we know that a lot of times in healthcare, there's unrealistic expectations when it comes to workloads. There's, working short isn't always great. And this is one of those things, coming to work, making sure that you're there when you're supposed to be there unless you're ill. I mean, that's a totally different situation. Not calling out for just because you don't feel like going to work that day, right? Remember that, organizations have to run, and when you're not there, that leaves other people short, right? Um, and then we have talked so much about communication. But your verbal, right? When you're talking with your CNAs, all right, make sure that you're using the clear, specific language, especially when we're delegating. You want to tell them exactly what needs to be done. You're the role model for those CNAs. So as a role model, okay, you need to model professionalism, right? You don't want to get into the gossip, the rumor mills, that kind of thing. Use iMessages. We know we've talked about using iMessages. What else? And then of course your nonverbal, right? Making sure that your verbal and your nonverbal match, right? If we're sending that consistent professional message, um, make sure that you're sure of yourself when you are giving that, delivering that message. Talked about written communication, um, you know, making sure that, you're reviewing your written messages before you're posting them so that you know that the message is clear. You want to make sure that if you're setting up the assignments for the day, that, they're exactly what they need. It doesn't require them to make judgments. And then, when you're writing up reports and meeting minutes and that kind of thing, make sure that it is very professionally written. Telephone, sometimes I wish we could just not answer the telephone. Um, Before you make a call, make sure you have everything that you need. And I think I've shared this story. I don't know if I've shared it with y'all. Brand new LPN. I was right out of school. I was working in skilled care. And I forget what was wrong with my patient. Honestly, I don't remember what was wrong with my patient. And I paged the doctor. The doctor called me back and I'm telling the doctor what's going on. And he stops me and he's like, well, what are his vital signs? I just stopped and was like, oh my gosh, like I have the vital signs. And he said, it literally said, call me back when you have his vital signs. And I slammed the phone down. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed that I went and got the vital signs and I tried to get another nurse to page him so I wouldn't have to talk to him. Um, but yeah, lesson learned, okay? Lesson learned. Always have your vital signs ready. Um, but when you're making a call, people can tell when you're smiling and when you're not, even on the other end of a phone, right? They can tell by your tone of voice how you are, basically the tone of the phone call. Um, and then use your active listening skills, which we know that I know your active listening skills. Your change of shift, um, reports. These are different. I mean, I haven't worked for a whole lot of companies as far as long-term care. I've worked for three over my nursing career because I've been usually stay for long periods of time. Change of shift is different at every single one. Some do walking rounds, some do like a huddle at the nurse's station. Um, I will tell you just based off of my experience, and you take it with a grain of salt, always do walking rounds, always do walking rounds, always do walking rounds. Um, Only once in my life, or in my career, um, I, we would do the staff huddle and, oh, everything's great. Everything's perfect. Everybody's fine. They slept all night, la, la, la. Um, And I go to do my rounds in the morning, and one of the residents was deceased. And deceased like cold. The body was cold. So don't know when the last rounds were done. But I always recommend walking rounds. I've also walked in where, residents have been on the floor. So I'm just, you know, good year walking rounds. And just get a really good update on them. With change of conditions, use your S bar. This is always going to be an effective way to make sure that you want to get their signs and symptoms. You want to use that S bar so that when you are calling the provider, that you have all the necessary information to provide to them, including that, what do you think should be done? And then go from there. All right, so we're gonna go back to this more about team building and thing. Stress happens, okay? It is a part of all of work environments. Doesn't matter if you're in healthcare, if you're working in a restaurant, because I have worked in restaurants myself, or long-term care, it doesn't matter. Stress happens, and stress can lead to dysfunctional work behaviors. All right, plain and simple. So your job as a leader or a manager is going to create a less stressful work environment. All right. And you can, help to control stress by the way that, or how you think, or altering the way that you think. So what are some things that would cause stress at work?
Unorganized management.
Oh, unorganized management. Okay. What else?
And bad report from the previous nurse.
Okay, that's a good one.
Working short staff.
Working short staff,
Not having supplies.
not having supplies.
Micromanagement.
Absolutely, all of the above. Go ahead.
Micromanagement.
Micromanagement. All right, why do you think some people micromanage?
Because they're bored.
I like that answer.
And they're not helping other.
Control issues.
Control issues, right? Um, Control, trust issues. That's usually why people micromanagement or micromanage. Yeah, hit the nail on the head. So when we look at dysfunctional job behaviors, all right, and stress, so some of the dysfunctional job behaviors are, not doing everything that you're supposed to be doing. It could even include, cause negative interactions between CNAs or, nurses and CNAs. It can lead to ineffective communication. Um, it can also lead to staff turnover, unhappy residents, unhappy families, right? Everybody's unhappy. All right. So, right, we need to be able to handle this and fix this, right? And so you have to manage the stress on your units. And so this is kind of like be happy, right? I'm not saying be like, oh yeah, everything is fine. No, but have a more positive attitude, right? Try to look and see what's going on. Try to create that environment that is less stressed. And guide and support your nursing assistants when they experience stress. So for my CNAs, I'm going to ask you a very important question. How many of you have worked with nurses that will go and answer call bells? 3. Okay. Right. How many of you have worked with nurses that don't even know how to turn off a call bell? Okay. Right. Um, I love CNAs. And this is something, whether you're a CNA or a CNAs understand, if you've not ever been a CNA or worked as a CNA, CNAs bust their butts. They work very hard. They get paid very little to do what they do. Okay. I love my CNAs. I've truly worked with some wonderful CNAs in my time, and I treat them like gold, okay? They want to take a break, go sit down, I'll go get the call bells. Like they've been busy, I'm not doing anything, go take a break. I will answer the call bells. Half the time, when a call bell goes up, I'm up before they even move. And that's not disrespectful. It's not because I don't trust them. It's because I know how hard they work. And if I'm not doing anything, then why should I just sit there and not answer a call bell? Right? There's a lot of stress, with CNAs. Again, it's a lot of hard work. They're constantly lifting, pulling, turning, right? Transferring, they're feeding, they're delivering trays, they're toileting. And they don't. They're very underpaid and very strong supportive of that. They are very underpaid for the work that they do. Um, Not saying that every CNA is the best CNA. Okay, we've got some CNAs that I have actually told them I will not work with them because they don't do anything. And so they've had to transfer them away from me. Um, but yeah, so you know, we have to manage their stress levels because it can be a lot. And it depends on your shift as well. How bad, how much stress it is, but always just look out. And so a lot of times, when we look at it from our leadership, a leadership role, okay, um, we have to look at ourselves and how we cope with stress, right? Because if we're not coping well with stress, it's going to trickle down to the people that we work with, right? And that's going to make it even worse. So how do we, how we handle stress? We need to know, how we handle stress and what are some ways that we can handle our own stress so that when we were working with other people that are stressed, right, that we are not, adopting their feelings as well, right? That we're able to have some control. So, how do we control, how do we make that less stressful environment? Positivity, positivity, positivity. The job has to get done, right? Regardless. And so being positive, organizing your shift. Now, like I said, time management is really key. Some days my organization, how I run my shift is great. Other days I just throw the papers up in the air and say we're just gonna do what we gotta do to get it done, right? Um, Making sure that they have adequate resources. Like I said, in the one facilities that I work with, linen was always an issue, always an issue. Um, and so how do we fix that? Um, Making sure that your nursing assistants take their breaks. That is a big one, right? Nurses is, sometimes we don't get to take our breaks either, right? But really making sure, showing some respect, making sure that they're taking their breaks, they're getting away for 5 minutes, their lunch breaks, whatever it is. And try to create the calm environment. When chaos is ensuing, you've got upset residents, upset family members, they didn't like lunch, right? It's a really busy time of the day. You got providers and administration, everybody come in. Try to keep it calm on that unit so that your staff knows that you're there to support them. And treat your CNAs with respect. Like I said, your CNAs, as a nurse, your CNAs are your backbone. They are your biggest helpers. Um, Saying thank you, showing I'm not saying you have to buy them donuts every day or, things like that. But even just a simple thank you, hey, like you're doing a really good job. I appreciate that, right? Treating them with respect, helping when you can. That also will go a really long way because if they see that you're willing to help, right, they're going to respect you a lot more than if you were just sitting there watching everybody else run around like crazy. All right. So before we go into problem solving, all right, let's go ahead and take a break. Be back at 4:05. All right. So, problem solving. So having problem solving skills is definitely going to be, we got some people that got knocked out. All right. So having problem solving skills is definitely something that is going to be part of your nursing career. All right. And so there is a process that you can use, all right, to assist in your problem solving. All right. So the first step, I don't know, people keep getting kicked off. So the first step obviously is going to um, be to collect data. All right. So you can think of what's the word I'm looking for? Just think of any type of situation that is occurring within your on your unit, trying to think of a good problem, like, a good problem solving or a good problem. Give me a problem that could arise on your unit as a nurse, and we'll go through the problem solving steps.
Someone doesn't like their assignment.
Somebody what?
Doesn't like their assignment.
Oh, that's a good one. All right. So we have somebody that doesn't like their assignment. Okay. Um, let's see. How would we problem solve this? Um, let's say, okay, so, well, the first thing, right, would be to find out why they don't like their assignment. Okay. So is it because um, is it just a really heavy assignment? Is there a specific client that they don't want to work with? Um, right? We want to collect all the data, right? Why did they not like their assignment? So defining the problem, right? Um, and then set a goal, right? It's not always easy, right? You've got a group of CNAs, you can't, it's not always easy to just say, oh, let's just switch assignments, right? So we need to get all the information that we have that we can get, define the problem, and then we set a goal, right? Just like your nursing process. Okay. This sounds really familiar, right? You set your goal, select interventions, right? How are we going to get to a point where everybody is happy, basically. And then evaluate and see what happens. So we'll do there is an example in the book. So we have two residents. All right. They're sitting in the sunroom. They're in a long-term care facility. One resident's position is that he wants the window open. The other resident, of course, he wants the window shut. Right. And so, what do we do? Right. So we talked to both residents. Why does one resident want the window open? He wants a window open because he wants fresh air, right? The other resident who wants the window closed, we ask him why he wants the window closed. And he says, so it won't be drafty. Okay. So how do we fix this, right? So we've got the data. One wants the window open because he likes the fresh air. The other resident wants the window closed because he thinks it's going to get drafty. All right. So we have our data. All right. So the problem is one wants the window open and one wants the window
Can you
closed.
give them more blankets?
Good job, Dominique. Absolutely.
Why
So
don't you just move the one who want the window open by the window and the other one by the door?
we could try that too. That could be a potential, but maybe they both want to look out the window, right? So then we have to, yeah, there's always something, right? So we have to kind of, and that's a good way, right? For one, we could absolutely give him some blankets, right? Let him wrap himself up. We could move him, Janika, absolutely. We can move him a little bit further away so that maybe he can still see see outside, but he's not going to be right next to the window, right? That he's feeling the draft, right? Separate them, in sunrooms, in a lot of like most of the sunrooms that I've been in a long-term care facility, right? There's multiple walls and multiple sets of windows, right? So you can put one next to an open window over here and one next to a closed window. They still get the outside view, right? And they're both happy. It's a win-win situation, right? We've made sure that he's still warm, he can still look out the window, and the other one is comfortable with the window open, enjoying his nice fresh air, right? So that's a win-win situation, right? So we did our interventions and then we go back and we evaluate. Is everybody happy, right? Is resident A happy? Resident A is happy because the window is open. He can feel the breeze on his face. And resident B is warm and he can still look out the window, right? So that's a win-win situation, right? We want to try to, when we use our problem solving, steps, we want to make sure, we want to try to have a win-win situation. We don't want a win-lose situation, right? Where one person gets what they want and then the other person is left to be frustrated, right? Because then we really didn't solve any issue, right? We just created a whole nother one. So that could be, things that we could do. Another one could be that, one of the residents, has to leave the sunroom while the other one enjoys their breeze, right? But that's really not, that's a win-lose, right? That's saying that the resident that wants the window open is more important than the one who doesn't, right? So again, we want to try to have a win-win situation. Other knowledge that you're going to need for leadership, occupational skills, right? So occupational skills, those are the things that are, the knowledge and the skills of nursing. So documentation. Documentation, documentation, documentation. Everybody's heard it, right? If it wasn't documented, it wasn't done. All right. And so then, the guidelines that you use are for documentation are a lot of times are going to be based off of your federal and state laws as well as your specific organizational requirements. Make sure that you are using very specific, very objective documentation. And that will remember that whatever you put in that client's chart, that is a legal document. Anybody can, they have access to that chart. They're going to see your documentation. If it gets pulled into court, they're going to see your documentation. All right. So always make sure that you are doing really good. You need to know the legal aspects. All right. So your CNAs, you all have direct contact with your clients. And so you have to make sure that you are acting within your, legal and your federal regulations. So federal regulations, okay? So all facilities have to be in compliance with federal, state, and local laws. No if, no ands, no buts. And so the impact of the federal regulations that is guided by the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act, or what we call the OBRA Act, as well as CMS. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services is another really big one. That's how we get reimbursed for a lot of it. And so within OBRA, we have the Nursing Home Reform Act. Okay. And so that act was there to ensure that residents of nursing homes receive quality care. Okay. That will result in achieving or maintaining their highest predictable physical, mental, and psychosocial well-being. So you have to have knowledge of the laws and the regulations. Every facility also will have a residence bill of rights, okay? And those bill of rights are usually posted throughout the facility. Even if you go into a hospital, right, you'll see that there's a patient bill of rights that is hanging there. Organizational skills. Organizational skills. Um, you know, you have to have good organizational skills. Sometimes these are, things that may need to be developed over time. Time management, like I said, time management is always going to be super important. have your shift laid out, the things that you have to get done when you get report, right? You're gonna get all the stuff that you need to do, go to check on. And so it's not always about, it's more about management than it really is about time. So your ability to manage time will help you organize tasks, allow you to be successful. Another really big one is your what we call CQI, or continuous quality improvement. And this is all healthcare facilities have a CQI, whether it's a committee, a team, whatever they want to call it. And so the focus of the continuous quality improvement is going to be quality of care. All right. So quality is identified by client outcomes. All right. And so client outcomes are observable, measurable results of nursing activities, right? Think of your nursing process. Put all those interventions in place to meet those goals, right? And then we go back and we evaluate. Did they meet their goals? Did they not meet their goals? Right? Do we need to go back and reevaluate? And so the CQI is all departments within the facility. So maintenance, dietary, therapy, nursing, administration, all of those. And so you may be asked to sit on a continuous quality improvement. And what they look at is the goals are right to improve the quality of care, protect integrity, protect them, protect and your clients as well. Um, but what CQI will do is go back and look at things like, it looks at falls or other incidents that have occurred and do a retrospective review and how to prevent it from happening again. And so sometimes, it could be tedious to say the least, but you may be asked to sit on a CQI, and if you can, some cases you can even volunteer by asking like, hey, I'd like to be part of this. And that really will help. Um, you may even be involved in rewriting policy and procedure. So it's always something to think about. And then of course you have to have conflict resolution skills, right? Being able to help settle differences, um, that nice little problem solving. Human relationship skills. Some people, I've worked with nurses that I don't know how they're nurses because they have no people skills, right? They're very task oriented. They just want to do what they have to do and be done. Okay. But you have to have human relationship skills. You have to be able to get along with people. You have to be able to relate with people. And it's anger management, and could be internal, it could be dealing with your own anger management, but it also could be working with your CNAs, right, and helping them through their anger management. Not saying you're never going to get angry, but if you do get, it has to be handled very professional. Okay. If your anger is unjustified, or you are unprofessional, or you display your anger inappropriately, it can get you and others in trouble. Okay. So really having, getting a hold of that, and trying to, whether it's, um, taking deep breaths, right? You need to know your own personal signs, like how you are, you're becoming angry. Think about how you're feeling, recognize that, okay? Um, and then, of course, stop and think about what you are going to say, right? Before you actually say it. Um, when you're angry, speak slowly, speak lower, acknowledge that you're feeling angry, and maybe you just need to take a time out, take a break, walk away, gather your thoughts. You never want to act on that anger. Um, Empowering your team members, talked about this. empowering them, encouraging them to grow. I always encouraged my CNAs go back to school, especially if they were really good. I'm like, you need to go back to school. You need to go to nursing school. My same thing with the LPNs that I worked with. I'm like, you guys need to go back and get your RN, like keep on going. Increase their self-confidence. That's another big thing that we can do with our team, and always be non-judgmental. You have some CNAs that are great. They can, get everything done. You have some CNAs a little bit slower, a little unsure of themselves, especially some of the newer CNAs. All right. You want to be non-judgmental, right? You want to encourage them, show them, teach them, guide them. All right. You're the example. All right. You're the leader. And so, being able to take them aside, maybe helping them, show them how to do something correctly, or making sure that they're doing something correctly. Which is going to bring us into the last part of our lecture. And so the last part of this is going to be assignment versus delegation. All right. So assignment. Assignment is the distribution of work that each staff is responsible for during a given workday. Okay. So, you go in, you set your CNA assignments. CNA A has 1 through 5, which, would be nice, but CNAB has, 6 through 10, you got 11 through 15, right? You set your assignments. They know that the goal, right, is to get their residents up, dressed, bathed, or up, bathed, dressed, fed, right? Which are the normal assignment things that they would do. Those activities are consistent with their job description, their scope of practice, their education background. All right, they have responsibility. They're accountable for completing their assignment, right? So making sure that everybody is up, dressed, showered, whatever it is, they are responsible for that. Delegation, on the other hand, okay, is a transfer of responsibility, all right, for the performance of an activity from one person to another, while the person that is transferring the responsibility is still held responsible, all right? So, for example, if I ask a CNA to go get vital signs on Mrs. Jones, okay, I am still responsible, okay, for those vital signs being done, but I have transferred the responsibility of getting the vital signs to my CNA. The person that you are asking to do, or that you are delegating, has to accept it. So if I said, let's see, Akoya, go get, Mrs. Jones' vital signs. Akoya can say, I don't want to go get Mrs. Jones's vital signs. Okay. That person that you're delegating to has to agree to that delegation. Delegation is one of the best things that you can do as a nurse. It ensures the accomplishment of cost-effective client care, right, which is going to increase client outcomes and satisfaction. Nursing is not an individual sport. Okay. It's not an individual sport, right? It's a team sport. Everybody has to work together in order to get the job done, right? There's no, I'm not a big fan of it, but I'll say it, there's no I in team. Okay. Right. We all have to work together. So, where do I know? How do I know what I can delegate, what I can't delegate? What do I do? All right. So, your Nurse Practice Act. All right. Believe it or not every state Nurse Practice Act allows LPNs to delegate. Okay. So, your state Nurse Practice Act is going to be very important. That's going to provide you guidance for legal delegation. Delegation's not a required act. No one says, oh, you must delegate. Okay. If but I'm going to tell you, like I said before, nursing is not an individual sport. It is a team sport. So you can also look at your state board of nursing. And so if if your nurse practice act says that you can delegate tasks, okay, then, you'll have the authority to delegate to nursing assistants or your unlicensed assistive personnel. The other part of this too is that you need to know the scope of practice of your CNAs or your UAPs as well. All right. So got to check your Nurse Practice Act. Your Board of Nursing is another really good one, to see that if you are allowed to delegate. And then, of course, you need to know what their scope of practice is, right? So that you don't try to delegate something that is not within their scope of practice. And scope of practice, although with it's very similar according to states, but there are certain states, that CNAs can do more or, sometimes even less. Other resources for delegation, the rules, regulations, guidelines, memorandums from your state board of nursing. NAPNES is another one, which, the NAPNES standard of practice, the educational competencies, the NALPN practice standards, your employer policies regarding delegation, the NLN, the board of nursing, like I said, your healthcare facility. There's a variety of different things that you can use to look at delegation. So we have the 5 rights of delegation. All right. So the right task, the right circumstance, the right person, the right direction and communication, and the right supervision and evaluation. All right. So right task. The delegated task must conform to established guidelines, meaning that it has to be within their scope of practice. They have to know how to perform that task that you're delegating. Okay. The right circumstances. Delegated tasks do not require independent nursing judgment. All right. So if you're telling, for example, what's the word? If you ask your CNA to go get vital signs, okay, all you're asking for them is to go get the vital signs, bring them, bring it back to you. All right. They are not going to make any determination. Oh, is this blood pressure too high? Should I recheck it? Like, none of that. They're simply there to go collect it. The client also must be stable. You cannot delegate a task to a CNA to an unstable client, right? So your patient's having chest pain, and you can't go say, "Hey, can you go get vital signs for me on the client that's having chest pain?" Right? It has to be a stable client, the right person. Every CNA is not the same. Some have, much stronger skills, some have developing skills, some have weaker skills. All right. So you need to make sure that you decide who is qualified, who is competent to perform that task. Right direction and communication. So clear explanation about the task and the outcomes, when they should report back to you, and give them a timeline and expectations. All right. So like I was saying earlier, Akoya, please go to room 5, Mrs. Jones. I need her vital signs. So temperature, pulse, respirations, blood pressure, pulse ox. All right. Please go get those for me and report back to me with those vital signs, right? Whatever the task is, you want to just clear expectation, and then right supervision and evaluation. All right. So, maybe Akoya took an hour to go get the vital signs. All right. So you want to be like, Akoya, like, thank you for getting the vital signs. However, like this, should have been, a lot quicker. Whatever the feedback is. All right. Remember again, when you delegate, you are still responsible for the task, regardless if you're performing it. So you have to you have to provide supervision, you have to provide evaluation, right? How, even back to how we can improve the process. So I'm gonna, I'm trying to, okay. All right. I couldn't remember what slide it was on. So why is delegating important? Like I said, right? Nursing is not a team sport. There is no I in team. It increases your effectiveness as well as your efficiency. It is instrumental in realizing client goals in a cost-effective manner. It also may help nursing assistants increase and improve their job skills, right? If it's within their scope of practice and you give them a little bit more, that helps to improve their skills, right? It also helps to empower them and make them feel even more important that you're trusting them with certain things. So this is kind of what I was saying. So before you delegate, the client must be assessed. Okay. Again, you cannot delegate a skill or delegate a task to an unstable client. CNAs cannot delegate. So if Akoya was, if I asked Akoya, hey, can you go get the vital signs? Akoya can't turn around and say, hey, Karima, can you go get these vital signs? All right. So if I've, delegated to Akoya and Koya has accepted, then even, Koya is responsible for going to get those vital signs. Again, Koya could say, no, I'm not going to get those vital signs. Okay. I can ask why though. All right. So I can say, all right, Akoya, why do you not want to go get those vital signs? Right. Um, so for proper delegation, it has to be accepted voluntarily. All right. And so there's reasons why people don't want to do, don't want to accept delegation. But you want to find out why. And then always use that nursing process. So again, let's go through these because it's really important. Legal aspects. Delegate only if it's allowed by your Nurse Practice Act and facility policies. Determine the stability of their client. Delegate duties for which they have demonstrated ability. So Koya is really good with vital signs. So I know she is. So I'm going to go, I know I can count on Koya to go get those vital signs, right? Provide specific, objective, clear-cut directions to the nursing assistants for those delegated duties. Provide assistance and instructions when you delegate. You want to monitor the nursing assistants when they carry out those delegated duties. All right. So, sometimes it's just going and following up, right? Making sure that, there weren't any issues. Intervene if correction is needed to maintain safety. And then once the delegated duty is complete, you want to evaluate the safety and effectiveness of the duties that was delegated. These are here. This is where you really got to look. Okay. So if you delegated improperly and a resident was harmed, you are liable. For example, let's say instead of trying to think of something, all of a sudden now I can't think of something that's out of scope of practice. Okay. If I know, let's say Koya is my CNA and I know she's in nursing school, okay? And Mrs. Jones needs a Foley put in, okay? Is that a proper delegation? No, right? That's out of her scope of practice, right? That's out of her scope of practice. So, but Akoya was like, oh, this is great. I get to go do a Foley. I need the practice, and goes and does it. And something happens to the resident. Okay. I, okay, I can get in trouble for that. Okay. If I delegated properly, included monitoring and the client was injured, then the nursing assistant is also liable. So, oh my gosh. I can't even think of something. Trying to think of a good one though, but I can't. I don't know, let's say you went to go get vital signs and I don't know, the cuff stayed inflated and it stayed inflated and it caused, ischemia and I don't know, something happened, whatever. Okay. And the client was injured. then the CNA is also liable. I'm still liable regardless, okay? Because I'm the one that delegated the duty. But if the duty that was done incorrectly and caused harm, the CNA is also going to be liable. Um, should always consult with the RN or collaborate with the RN when we are delegating as well. So same thing with the RNs according to the American Nurses Association, right? NTSBN, the RN should also follow the five rights of delegation. Same thing is delegating to a CNA. So remember, if you delegate it improperly, you are going to be responsible if that client gets harmed. If you delegated properly, the CNA and something happened, the CNA is also going to be in trouble, unfortunately. So, what do we delegate? What are some things that we can delegate to CNAs? Hygiene, dressing, toileting, grooming, skincare, feeding, hydration, transfers, positioning, ambulation, range of motion, vital signs, INOs, um, height and weights, um, assistance with elimination, including calf care. They can do calf care, maintaining, fall prevention, heat and cold application, infection prevention, urine and stool specimen collection. What can we not delegate? Complex sterile procedures. So nursing assistants do not have training in sterile techniques. So again, I'm not going to go ask somebody to go put a Foley catheter in. Do trach care. All right. Same thing with crisis situations. Remember, cannot delegate to an unstable client. They have to be stable. All right. So like I said earlier, if Mrs. Jones is having chest pain, well, yeah, I can't have you go do those vital signs because they need to be assessed. We know that RNs do initial client education. LPNs can reinforce the initial client teaching. Nursing assistants, although they can collect simple data, they have not been trained to make decisions about or interpret the data. So, like I said, she went and got the vital signs and the blood pressure was really high. She doesn't have the ability to make that determination. If should I recheck it? What should I do? Okay. Same thing if, with finger sticks or glucose monitoring, they can't, none of that. They can't determine if those need to be rechecked. When delegating again, remember it has to be within their scope of practice. If it's not within their scope of practice, you cannot delegate that task. All right. Are we good with this? And we're going to talk more about delegation. This isn't it, but we're almost done with this slideshow and I have the other one. Last little part of this. So get certain, if there are certifications that are available to LPNs. All right. And so this is something that, could also increase your, what's the word I'm looking for? Increase your employability, right? It may even open the doors for more, opportunities. So, it's something that you might want to think about. IV certifications, the long-term care certifications is a new one. Wound care certifications, all again, just increase um your scope, your employability, right? Um Seminars are good. Seminars can be expensive. So, don't say, well, Miss Martinez told me to attend seminars, but there are seminars, some are free. You can do leadership courses as well. Some organizations, depending on where you work, actually have leadership courses for new nurses, in-service programs, reading, networking. All of these things are really good to help increase your employee or your employment opportunities. Um, Wound care is a big one. Wound care. I love wounds. Anybody else? No? Nobody likes, oh, I love wound care. I hate the fact that people get wounds,
I
but if
like,
you
yeah.
Yeah. if you have one, I'm all on it. Like I love a good wound.
Don't you have to take a
Um,
class, Miss Martinez?
I'm sorry.
Don't you have to take a class now to be like one person?
Um, there's a test. I know there's a test. I don't know. So usually with just basic understanding of some of your certifications, you have to have worked within like with the, within an area for a certain amount of time. So like um I had thought about doing my wound care certification and then I think it's like 2 years. There's like tests and there's specific things that you have to do. So yeah, in order to get certification, same thing for the long-term care. I actually looked at it for long-term care certification because I was curious about it. You have to have worked in long-term care. I think it's a minimum of a year. And you can take an exam. It's a certification exam to get your certification, and then any certification that you have, this is important to know as well. So any certification that you take is going to have continuous education requirements in order for you to renew. Okay, so I have a managed care certification, and I renew, I think it's every 2 years. But for every year, I have to have so many continuing education credits in managed care, so that when I submit for my renewal, I have to send them my certificates to get my renewal. And it's any certification that you have is going to have specific continuing education requirements. In addition, this is different from the state mandated. I'm, renewing my nursing license and I have to have those continuing education credits. Okay, so it's two different ones. Um, but some of the certifications, can be very helpful. So I did my managed care certification only because the time where I was working, our contract, when they renewed our contract, it required that all of the nurses that worked, um, in my area had I forget, we had a specific time frame. We all had to become certified. And so my company, they paid for the education materials and they paid for us to take the exam. And that was a hard exam, I'm not gonna lie. Um, So it depends. Some of the organizations that I've worked at as well, especially for wound care, if you get into wound care and once you've gotten the time in, the allotted time that you need to work in that, or, in that field, they may pay for you to, they may pay for the education materials as well as the exam. It just really depends. But for every certification exam, there is some sort of review material that can be purchased. Some of it's pricey, some of it's not. It really just kind of depends. There are some free resources out there too, depending on what, certification you're looking at. But just always know that that's an option. The ability for certifications, it does, of course, increase, as you were to go back and get your RN. There's much more certifications, but there's, who wants to go back and get their RN when they're done with their LPN? Yeah, so when you go back with your RN, I mean, there's pretty much a certification for every area. Med surge, critical care, emergency room, like I said, managed care, there's case management. So, you can Google nursing certifications and see what's out there. So lots of things out there. So let's continue our wonderful discussion on delegation. And so share my screen. So like this is a little bit going to be some questions in here, and I have some additional questions as well. But again, we need to delegate. Again, it's, there's takes a team, right, to care for our residents. And so goal is to multiply yourself in ways that not only saves time, but more importantly, develops competency and capability of your team and your individual team member, right? So you're not just making sure that everything is getting done, but you're also empowering your team. All right. So why are people hesitant to delegate? All right. I enjoy what I do and I don't want to sacrifice the work. Or no one else can do it as well as I can. Or it may make me look bad if someone does a better job than me. Or I don't want to burden people with additional work. It's easier for me to do it myself. The company expects me to do it since I'm the expert, or I don't want to jeopardize my position by making myself irrelevant. All right. Again, you can't do it all. I promise. You can't not do it all. So again, what do you need to know for delegation? Your scope of practice, right? As a LPN, am I allowed to delegate within my State Nurse Practice Act? You also need to know the scope of practice and the job description of who you are delegating to. You have to know the condition of the client, right? We cannot delegate to unstable clients, and the 5 rights of delegation. All right. So, scope of practice, RN, right? Our assessment, initial teaching care of clients that require frequent monitoring and unstable conditions. LPNs take care of stable clients with expected outcomes. UAPs, standard unchanging procedures, right? For the most part, our CNAs and our UAs, right? They pretty much, do the same tasks every day. Your 5 rights again: right task, right circumstance, right person, right direction and communication, right supervision and evaluation. So here we go. Question time. Which of the following clients would the RN delegate to the LPN? So this is delegation from RN to LPN. A post-op client who just came out of the OR, a new admission from the emergency department, a 3-day-old chest pain, or a client receiving an insulin drip. So, which of the following could the RN delegate to the LPN?
3-day-old chest pain.
3-day-old chest pain. Anybody else? Everybody concur?
I say 3.
Okay. So
301.
all right, so very good. The correct answer is a 3-day-old chest pain. All right, so a post-op client who just came out from the OR, not stable yet. They just got out of the OR. So a new admission, that's not a stable client. And then an insulin drip that needs to be monitored by an RN. All right, which patient with a health problem related to GI cancer would be the most appropriate to assign to an LPN? A patient who needs a blood transfusion secondary to GI bleeding, a patient who needs enemas and antibiotics to control GI bacteria, a patient who needs pre-op teaching for bowel resection surgery, or a patient who needs central line insertion for chemotherapy. So
2.
which of these?
I say 2.
I say 2.
2.
2. Awesome. Very good. Yes. A patient who needs enemas and antibiotics to control that GI bacteria. Very good. Right? RN has to monitor that blood transfusion. The RN has to do the pre-op teaching. And then obviously, I don't even think an RN is going to do a central line, right? So it's usually interventional radiologist, someone else is going to do that one. All right. The assisted personnel reports to the LPN that a patient's urine output for the past 24 hours has only been 360 mLs. What's our priority nursing action at this time? Are we going to put an 18 gauge IV in their non-dominant arm? Are we going to elevate the patient's head of bed 45 degrees? Are we going to instruct the AP to provide the patient with a pitcher of ice water or contact and notify the healthcare provider immediately? So we have a urine output of 360 mLs. What are we going to do?
Should we give
Breathe.
water first?
I'm sorry,
I
give
said,
them
should
water
we
first.
give them water first, and then maybe if they still not have an output, then maybe you give them IV with like some fluids.
But can you give them an IV?
No, I don't know. Can we? We can hang it.
You can hang it, yes.
Wait, we can't give an IV as an LPN?
It depends on where you're working. I'm going to put it
I'm
that
about to say,
way.
because why
I was
have
about to
IV class?
say,
Yeah, we did have IV class, but I don't know.
and
Oh,
we
that's
were
right.
able
You
to
guys
start
did have,
IVs.
huh?
Well, IV access, not start actually medicine, but we had IV class and we were able to start the IV.
Mm-hmm. Again, it
I
depends on
think
where
the
you're
only thing
working.
we
I'm not
can't
saying
do
like
with
no. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think the only thing we can't do with IVs is push narcs, push insulin, and something else.
You can't push medications at all. No IV push medications. You can hang on a pump. Yes, absolutely. So our urine output is 360 mLs. What's normal urine output?
30
30
ml
ml per
per
hour.
hour.
30 an
30
hour.
ml per hour. All right. So the correct one would be to contact and notify the healthcare provider immediately. 360 mLs for 24 hours is significantly low. That's like less than half of what our normal urine output should be. So we need to let the provider know. All right. Which actions should the LPN delegate to an assistive personnel for the patient with diabetes? So one, check finger stick glucose results every hour, record INO, measure vital signs every shift, assess for indicators of fluid imbalance, notify the healthcare provider of changes in glucose levels, and assist the patient to reposition every 2 hours. So what is within the CNA's or the UAP's scope of practice?
You can measure vitals, and they
Can
can
do,
reposition.
yep. So you can do vitals and you can reposition. What else?
Can they record their input and output, like, and let
Ab-
us know?
Absolutely. They can do INO. What else? Anything else? So we got INO, we got vital signs, and what else you guys said? Oh, reposition, right? Very good. Absolutely. So we're recording INOs, measuring vital signs, assisting to reposition. All right, so let's go ahead and take a quick break. Um, and so be back at, what is it, 5:05. All right. So let's go to the next question. All right. Here we go. We have 4 patients that arrive spontaneously at the ED or the emergency department. Which patient requires the most rapid action by the triage nurse and LPN assisting to protect other patients from infection? So we have a 3-year-old patient who has paroxysmal coughing and whose sibling has pertussis. We have a 5-year-old patient who has a new pruritic rash and possible measles. We have a 62-year-old patient who has an ongoing methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, or MRSA, abdominal wound infection, or a 74-year-old patient who needs tuberculosis testing after being exposed to TB during a recent international airplane flight. So which one of those is going to require the most rapid action by the triage nurse and LPN to protect other patients from infection?
I'm gonna say number 4.
Okay, so we had number 4. Anybody else got any ideas?
I was like 1.
All right, we got a 4 and we got a 1. Anybody else? Everybody else is like, nope.
Okay, between 1 and 2, I'm stuck with one.
And we got a 1 and a 2. Okay. All right, let's see. What do we got? It is a 5-year-old who has a new pruritic rash and possible measles. I'm sorry, my dog has attitude today. I don't know what is wrong with her. How is measles? I can't even spell it. I can't even say measles. How is measles transmitted?
Airborne.
It's airborne, right? So it can get into the air and it can spread. So that would be the most important one. Abdominal wound infection, unless somebody is going to be up in their abdominal wounds, not likely to get transmitted. Um, the 3-year-olds with pertussis, yes, I mean, it can be communicable, but we're really worried about this 5-year-old. All right. The LPN is caring for a patient with osteoporosis who has an increased risk for falls. Which intervention should the nurse delegate to the assistive personnel? So, identifying environmental factors that increase the risk for falls, monitoring their gait, balance, and fatigue level while with ambulation, collaborating with the physical therapist to provide the patient with a walker, or assisting the patient with ambulation to the bathroom and in the halls. So which of those would be appropriate to delegate to the UAP?
I
4.
say 4.
Number 4. Very good. Correct. All right. The charge nurse observes an LPN assigned to provide all of these interventions for a patient with Paget's disease. Which action requires that the charge nurse intervene? So 1, administering 600 milligrams of ibuprofen to the patient. 2, encouraging the patient to perform exercises recommended by a physical therapist. 3, applying ice and gentle massage to the patient's lower extremities. And/or 4, reminding the patient to drink milk and eat cottage cheese. So, which action would require that the charge nurse intervene? It's a big one. That's a hard one. Who knows what Paget's disease is? That's probably where we need to start, right? So what is Paget's disease? So Paget's disease is a chronic disorder. It causes rapid, disorganized bone remodeling. Okay, so the joints will become deformed, I guess would be the best way to say it. So they'll have bone pain, arthritis, they're risk for fractures. They're also risk for nerve compression.
3.
Great. So very good. All right. So the bones grow larger, they become weaker than normal. So applying ice and massage would be where we would need to intervene. All right. Awesome. You guys, good job. All right. So we have some more questions that I can provide. Give me 1 second to pull them up. All right. Share my screen again. This first one's going to be a select all that apply. All right, so for a patient with a tracheostomy, which duties can the nurse safely delegate to assistive personnel? So we have holding the trach tube when the nurse is changing the ties and the tube holder, instruct the patient how to cough effectively, gather the trach sterile supply kits prior to the dressing change, checking the trach cuff pressure with a manometer, assisting the nurse in delivering oxygen before and during sterile suctioning, or 6, auscultating the lungs before and after suctioning the trach tube. So which of those can the
I would
nurse
say 1 and 3.
1 and 3
Say 5. 1 and
and
5.
5? All right, so 1, 3, and 5. Very good. Absolutely correct. So the UAP can hold the trach tube while the nurse is changing the ties in the tube holder. They can assist in delivering oxygen before and during, and they can gather the supplies. Good job. All right, the charge nurse is delegated reading the labs of a patient with COPD to a float nurse. The patient has the following ABGs. We have a pH of 7.35. We have a PaCO2 of 48 millimeters of mercury. We have a we have a PaCO2 of 48. We have a PaCO2 of 80, bicarb of 28. The float nurse is unsure if he should take any further action based on the ABGs. Which course of action should the charge nurse suggest? So we suction the patient, increase their oxygen to 3 liters per minute, notify respiratory therapy for PRN breathing treatment, or continue to monitor. So you have to know your ABG values. So we'll start with pH. What's normal pH?
7.35, that's 7.45.
All right, so is his pH normal?
It's within the range.
Okay. What are normal PaCO2?
35 to 45.
Good job. So is that normal or abnormal?
It's high.
A little high.
Okay. Our PaCO2, what is normal? I mean, there's something wrong with this question, isn't there?
Mhm.
I just realized that. I'm trying to see I don't know which one should be oxygen.
They're both high.
Yeah, I'm assuming the second one should be PaO2, not CO2, which PaO2, right? Normal would be 75 to 100, right? What's normal bicarb?
22 to 30.
22 to 26.
26.
So very close, very close. That was awesome. All right, so what we have determined is that my pH is normal, right? My CO2 is a little bit high. My O2, if that's correct, is normal. right? It's within parameters, and my bicarb is a little bit high. So what should we do? It's a hard one, right?
Continue to monitor.
Continue to monitor. Very good. Yep. So, if he's got COPD, right? So mild COPD. Good job. All right. The nurse has delegated all of the personal care of her patients to the assistive personnel. Which of the following situations would warrant the nurse to give additional guidance to assistive personnel? So, a patient with COPD who is reclining in a chair at a 120-degree angle. A patient with TB in a negative pressure room with the door closed. A patient on a clear liquid diet who is eating a popsicle. Or a patient with viral pneumonia being transported to X-ray with a surgical mask on. Which one of those would require us to intervene?
Number one.
Number one. Yep. So they should be in a Fowler's position, leaning forward, right, to assist them in breathing. Very good. All right. The nurse is caring for a post-op patient with a tonsillectomy. Vital signs upon return to the unit were temperature 37 degrees Celsius or 98.7 degrees Fahrenheit, pulse 76, respirations 20, blood pressure 134/72, and O2 sats are 98 on 2 liters, and have remained stable for the past hour. What post-op duty should not be delegated to the AP? 1, check vital signs every 30 minutes for 2 hours. 2, position the patient in a semi-Fowler's position. 3, assess the patient for frequent swallowing. Or 4, place an ice pack around the neck. Which should we not delegate to the AP?
3. Because
3.
UPs can't assess, right?
Okay. So we'll go with 3. Anybody else? Correct. UAPs cannot assess. All right. The nurse and an AP are assigned to a patient on mechanical ventilation. Which action should the nurse delegate to the assistive personnel? Assessing the need to suction the ET tube or the endotracheal tube. Assisting the respiratory therapist with obtaining an ABG. Evaluating the response to a medication, or cleansing and reapplying a transparent dressing to a stage 1 pressure injury. So which one can we delegate?
2.
Very good. Yes, you can delegate the assisting the respiratory therapist with obtaining an ABG. All right, so let's go. Let me get some more. You guys are really good. I mean, there wasn't a doubt, but you guys are doing great. Oh, it just gave me the same questions. Hold on, let me get. Ooh, here's a good one. All right. Sorry, it took me a minute to get a question that you hadn't had. All right. So the nurse is caring for a post-op patient who underwent surgery for placement of a porcine valve. Which instructions should the nurse give to the AP regarding post-op care of the patient? So, 1, use a soft toothbrush when providing oral care twice a day. Chart I&Os. Observe for and report obvious blood on the surface of the dressing. Report any complaints of chest pain or discomfort. Apply oxygen via nasal cannula at 2 liters per minute. And remind the patient to cough and deep breathe every 2 hours. So which can the AP do?
What is a porcine valve?
A pig valve. So a heart valve, a pig heart valve. So they've had, one of their heart valves isn't working, so they replaced it with a pig valve, a pig
4.
heart valve. So we can do 4. Okay. What else?
Say 1, 2, 6.
1, 2, and 1, 2, 4, 6. Anybody else? All right. Dun, 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 dun. All right. So they can 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. So 1, soft toothbrush when providing oral care. Most likely, if they've had surgery for a heart valve, they're going to be on blood thinners. Okay, so we're going to use those precautions, soft tissue or soft toothbrush. They can do the eye nose. They can observe, right? If they see that there's lots of dressing or lots of blood on that dressing, they can report that back to the nurse. They can report any complaints of chest pain or discomfort. And then, of course, yes, they can remind the client to cough and deep breathe every 2 hours. Ooh. All right. So which instruction would the nurse give to the assisted personnel about caring for a patient who has altered mental status during the post-ictal phase of a grand mal seizure? So 1, stay with the patient until he is alert and able to recall events. 2, assist the patient to a sidelining position and encourage rest. 3, arouse the patient every 15 to 20 minutes and give sips of fluid. Or 4, report, observe, and document the return to baseline behavior. What can we delegate to the assistive personnel? Which one of those?
I want to say number 2.
I'm sorry, number
2.
number 2. All right. Correct. So the assisted personnel, they can put them in the sidelining position, which is our recovery position, right? That helps to decrease the risk for aspiration. They'll be tired. Most patients, when they're post-ictal are tired, they should just be allowed to sleep and rest as needed. So we don't want to wake them every 15, 20 minutes and give them fluids. Um, Even when they become fully alert, they may not remember the seizure. So staying with them until they're alert and able to recall events, they may be there forever because they may not be able to recall that. And observe, report, and document the return to baseline behavior that cannot be delegated to the AP. So good job. Next. Here we go. The patient has a Glasgow Coma Scale score of 8. Which instruction would the nurse give to the AP? So encourage the patient to independently do as much care as possible. 2, remind the patient to use the call bell whenever assistance is needed. 3, identify yourself and explain everything that you are doing as you do it. And or 4, raise the head of the bed before feeding the patient or giving fluids. So, what's the Glasgow Coma Scale?
It's
And
like the
it says
level of
it's
consciousness.
comas. Yeah.
Okay. And so what would a score of 8 mean?
I can't remember
7 or
if
8,
it's
and then you start to worry,
watchfulness.
right?
The lower, the worse, right?
The lower, the worse. Yes. Ashley, what did you say?
That's what I said. I said the lower, the worse, right?
Yep. Does anybody remember what the best number is that you can get with GCS?
15.
Very good. Very good. So highest is 15, lowest, obviously. So
Our
where,
message teacher told us we're calling the doctor when they hit like 7 or 8.
so say that again. I'm sorry, Denasia.
Our med surg teacher told us that we're calling the doctor when they hit like 7 or 8.
Yeah. So what do you think we should?
3.
Three. Why? Anybody, before I hit the rationale, anybody want to guess why?
Because if they're not really aware of things, you need to keep reminding them.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to hit submit. So you did it. That absolutely is correct. You want to identify yourself and explain everything that you do as you are doing it. A GCS score of 8, they're in a coma. All right. And hearing is always the last sense to go. Okay. So just because they're in a coma and they're not responding to you doesn't mean that they can't hear. And so you always talk to your patients. I know I do it. Just go in, introduce, you always tell them you don't ever want to just start doing something, right, without them knowing. All right, I think we can do one more. In caring for an I can't even say the word. In caring for an unconscious patient, which instruction would the nurse give to the AP about positioning the patient? So are we going to put them in a lateral recumbent position? Are we going to place them prone with their head to the side? Are we going to place them in a supine position, aligning the head and neck? Or are we going to put them in a high Fowler's position with the side rails up? So what position would be the best for our unconscious patients?
Number 3.
Number 3. All right, let's see. All right, so for unconscious patient, it's the lateral recumbent position. This is your recovery position. So the same position that we would put them in for a seizure, we'll also put them, if they're unconscious, in that same position. Reason being is if they were to vomit, okay, even if they had excessive amounts of secretions, putting them in the lateral recumbent position, all right, will help to prevent aspiration. Good job, guys. You did great. I will put some more practice questions in the announcements so that you can practice them as well. And we are at the end of time. Don't forget about the live review is Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time. Same Zoom link. And I also see that Dr. Tenza put her review in as well. So if you can make it on Sunday, I look forward to seeing you. Otherwise, have a great week and I will see you next week. Don't forget, exam 2 next week.